Welcome to Nerd Institute. Join us as we journey through the silver screen, discussing the latest releases and dissecting our favorite fan theories, where we dive deep into the realms, galaxies, and dimensions of movies and streaming, and unite fans from every cinematic universe. Class is now in session.
Welcome back to Nerd Institute. We are back and at it again with the knee slap and then the switching of the legs.
Good old knee slapper episode for you here today.
There we go. Today, what are we talking about, Ethan? What are we diving into? The Last of Us?
Let's talk Last of Us, yeah.
Wow.
Let's do it.
So, before we get into it, if you haven't seen The Last of Us or played the game, there won't be any spoilers for part 2, because I'll try to stay clear of all the spoilers, but there will be spoilers for the show as well as the game, the first game at least. So
it'll be mostly me talking because he can't talk about.
I can't talk about anything. But
so just ask me questions.
Yeah. So first and foremost, what are your thoughts on The Last of Us?
I loved it. I think I heard it was the highest rated or the most watched HBO show.
Yeah, 100%.
Even more than
Game of Thrones,
which is crazy to me.
That is.
I don't know if it quite deserves that. Is it Game of Thrones that it's outrating, or is it the
I think it's HBO.
House of the Dragons.
I
sound like a grandpa. House of the Dragons.
Have you watched
of the Dragons show?
I think it might be House of the Dragon, but it's probably Game of Thrones because House of Dragon outdid Game of Thrones, isn't it? Or no? Am I bugging?
I'm not sure on the. I know that Game of Thrones is like their overall like biggest money maker that HBO has worked with.
Is it Sopranos?
Maybe. I know Sex and the City actually, ironically, has a pretty big draw for them as well. So, but those are totally different demographics. I know, like the fantasy realm, which I feel like Last of Us. That's the reason I made the connotation. Last of Us is firmly like in that fantasy realm with HBO's other fantasy realm shows.
Although they made it very real.
Yes. So I don't want to get too lost. I liked the show a lot.
Okay.
I think time will tell whether I like it more than Game of Thrones. I think time told whether I liked Game of Thrones as much as I originally thought I was going to like it, because I think by far that final season, most will agree, was a huge fall off. But I think the setup of this show is fantastic. Okay. The world building was great. Okay. The main characters, I have nothing really negative to say about Joel. I think there are some things with Ellie that could be
fleshed out
better, but I think it was a purposeful setup for her future development. So I'm very eager. I thought it was a very promising start.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. So for those who don't know, I have played the game. Last of Us is like, it's number one. It's got to be number one
for video, like a specific type of game.
Yeah, for video games in general. So this is how the list goes. It goes Last of Us, then PS4 Spider-Man, then it's so hard. God of War, most likely. And then, unfortunately, God of War knocked out Kingdom Hearts because Kingdom Hearts was in the top 3.
Keep talking. I'm going to grab my water.
No, you're good. So, Last of Us just overall got a 10 out of 10 on like every scale when the game first came out. And like I had no idea what The Last of Us was. Right. I went into GameStop one day and there was posters everywhere. I was like, sure.
Try this out.
Yeah, I'll try this out. And it blew my mind because I was like, this game is amazing. The story is great. The world building is amazing. The characters, Joel and Ellie, you get to like love them and nurture them. So when they were talking about adapting it to a show, I was nervous. It's the most cinematic, because Naughty Dog does very cinematic games. So like you have Uncharted, which wasn't a great movie. But if they made it into a show and they had someone other than Tom Holland and Mark Wahlberg, I think it might have succeeded a bit.
Yeah.
Um, but it wasn't a terrible movie. But anyway, Naughty Dog is great at cinematically world building in regards to video games, and so it lends itself.
What other games have they done? Naughty Dog?
Naughty Dog is Uncharted.
Okay, you just said that.
Yeah, Uncharted, Last of Us. Um, there's one that I'm missing that's like it's not really a world building game, but they're working on their next phase of whatever the big game is, whether that be The Last of Us Part 3
Mm-hmm.
or if it, although I don't know where that would go, or uh, maybe something new. So it's exciting. But
Interesting. Do you feel like I feel like personally it is kind of similar to Game of Thrones where the author of the books that the show is based on
worked.
uh the show surpassed what was written.
Mm-hmm.
So in this case being the game, I think the world of, I mean, I have no idea how season 2 ends, or the second game ends. It could end in a very finite way that's like all your answers are solved and here's the world back as normal. I doubt that's the case.
Mm.
uh I could see the show being very like branch like in that we might it, I'm again, I have no idea how the second
Yeah.
game ends, but if it ends in a way that like there's some finality to the characters that we know and love from this first season, it could potentially focus on another story somewhere else in the world, right?
So yeah, that's what we thought The Last of Us Part 2 was going to be.
Mm.
So at the end of Part 1, you end up in like a room somewhere and there's like a poster on the wall. Naughty Dog is like notorious for like leaving
Clues.
spoilers and clues
Yeah,
and
yeah.
different things. So there's like I think there were two females just like walking on this path, and it said uh it had some sort of title. So we were all very skeptical in regards to like, oh, that's probably going to be the second one.
Yeah,
Like it's
yeah.
going to focus, because like, where do you go after Joel decides that, you know, Ellie is more important than the rest of the world? So like,
Yeah.
I mean, there's more story with them, but the way that it ended in the show is the same way that it ended in the game. It's like,
I see.
is there anything else for them to kind of go over? She's kind of skeptical in regards to like her believing him, but
Right,
like
right.
I guess they can dive deeper into that. So needless to say, when we saw the poster, it was kind of like, oh, okay, like that's where they're going. A new story, and I'm all about it because then there's other factions, there's other maybe you get to learn more about fireflies, maybe you get to learn more about like different factions that are going on within the world, or maybe different countries.
Yeah.
Which I think the show did really well because in the game you're only focused as the United States.
Right.
And so with the show they expanded on like that it started in different places, or that it actually like affected the world.
I remember you saying that to me when that episode happened.
Mm-hmm.
It was almost like seeing the origins of COVID.
Yes.
Like this is the behind the scenes of the first incidents of COVID or something like that.
Yeah,
that's kind of what it felt like.
Yeah, and it's so weird seeing that like that shift, I guess. Just because it's, I don't know. It's it filled in a lot of the gaps for the game, but as someone that played the game, looking looking at it from like a fresh lens for someone that hasn't played the game, I can understand where there may be some disconnect. And I feel like I know these characters, so I'm more attached to them, but I don't know how you feel about it. Like after watching like only 8 episodes, they're hour long, but like do you feel as closely attached to these characters, or
as closely as what though?
ah,
Like, what are you comparing it to?
like I like at the end of playing the game, and this is hard because like playing as Joel for 40 plus hours,
Right. Oh, I see.
you
So I
know,
can't really compare it to that. I did play the game,
yeah,
so I think we talked about it, which we kind of teased. It's like
yeah,
we kind of teased this a while back because I think the intention was that I would kind of play the game simultaneously.
mm-hmm.
But I played through the first episode, like
Yep,
pretty much right where the first episode ends is what I played up to. And that was really interesting because you've kind of got me to do this with manga as well.
mm-hmm.
Because I've done like I don't want to read so far ahead that like I can watch an entire season and know exactly how it's going to end. I hate that. I hate the idea of that. But it was kind of cool playing and spending time with Joel, and I didn't even really get to meet Ellie,
No,
so
yeah,
I had no comparison. So I think in that regard, I've heard a lot of people say, "Oh, Ellie's not the way I was expecting her to be, or she's not the way she was in the game."
no,
I had no frame of reference,
yeah,
so I can't really say positively or negatively that that was done well, or I wish it had been done differently.
uh-huh,
I really only had a frame of reference for Joel's backstory,
got it.
which I thought was done pretty much verbatim, and I thought,
Perfection.
yeah,
Because
I
like
thought it was done
if you do
really
it
well.
any other way,
Yeah,
you ruin
it
the
doesn't
game.
work.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it doesn't because off, and that's why I wanted you to play like that first because I was scared that they were gonna like ruin it, and I was like, I don't want you to be
yeah. Don't
like,
touch it.
yeah, like I don't want you to watch the show and then come to me and be like, why the hell is this your favorite game? So so I wanted you to experience at least like what you were going into because as I said, like I went into the game, so I didn't know anything about it, played the game. That is what I went into blind. And
Yeah.
so like I had no idea of what this game was or what it was about. And like
Mhm.
in the first 30 minutes of playing the game, his daughter dies,
Yep.
which you thought that like I see this guy and the girl, and I'm like, oh, okay, that's the girl who's gonna be throughout the story,
Yeah.
right? Absolutely not. So the show made it a little bit different because like she's black and Ellie is white. So but in the game they're both white, and so I was like, oh, they look like the same girl.
Yeah.
So but yeah, it was yeah, mind blown. And then I was like, where do we go from here?
Right.
And then you just go on this journey with these two characters and as they interact with this world, and you as the character interact with the world even more, so like you can read different things that like expand the
Yeah.
lore.
You know something I really appreciated, and I was kind of waiting for it. This is kind of related to what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I remember being so confused. There was a point where I was like supposed to go somewhere, and you were like, "You got to find a ladder," and I was like, "Where that? I don't see a ladder." There was an episode where they like actually showed them get a ladder
Yep.
and set it up, and I'm like, "They're staying a long time on this," and I get why.
Yep.
Like you're getting these little moments of the game, like
Yeah.
throwing the bottle to cause a distraction,
Yep.
things like that sort of gameplay stuff.
Yeah. And so like I kind of wish they would have thrown like a Molotov cocktail at someone, but once you play the game, it's just yeah, it's on a different level because you spend so much time with these characters. You develop a lot of love for
Yeah,
them, and so it's like playing D&D where you put yourself into the game essentially. And
yeah,
so it's the kind of same thing with Joel. So that's where I grapple with it. Like,
hmm,
did it do enough? Like, it gave the story beats,
yeah,
but like, did it do enough to entice people that are viewing this for the first time, have
yeah,
no idea,
hmm,
um, like to get invested into the story? So
yeah,
that I don't know,
right.
but
I think obviously ratings wise, either there are so many gamers that have been dying for a good adaptation of a show like this.
I mean, as soon as
Like
it came
hearing you
out,
talk about it, it's funny because I was thinking about this is probably the greatest video game to live action adaptation.
mm,
I wish the movies were able to do things to this level as well.
yeah, it's
Because
hard.
I was thinking about it like in the pantheon of like great video game adaptations, what is there? Like I think honestly Sonic is like maybe the best
Yeah.
video game adaptation. I have a weird place in my heart for the very first Mortal Kombat movie.
Mm.
Just because that was just like, it's, you go back and watch it now and it does, the effects do not hold up, but like at the time I was like, yes, like this. And
Yeah.
it's still, it has like a, it knows what it was.
Yeah.
I think that movie knew what it was. It wasn't trying to be something
Yeah.
like really high level story.
Mhm.
It's just they knew you wanted a world that set up, this fighter A was needed to fight fighter B, and that's all the movie is about.
Yeah.
It served its purpose. But I mean, what else is there? Like, I feel like every video game movie adaptation has had a pretty significant letdown.
Yeah.
Um, I can't think of anything.
Although TMNT, well, that's not a video. It's a video game, but it's not a video game.
It was a cartoon first, I think.
Yeah.
Animated series.
So,
But I mean, I guess that's,
although
if
that
that's
movie-
true, we could even say like the X-Men movies were video game adaptations.
that's true. Yeah.
Even
yeah.
though it was like a comic book
Yeah.
that adopted a video or a animated series
Yeah.
franchise that adapted a video game. So yeah,
Yeah, it is the best live action for sure. I think Arcane, it's easier
Right.
to do
yeah. Arcane would be in
animated.
there for a
Yeah,
video game. Yeah,
I feel like it's easier to do animated just because you're able to kind of expand upon different things. But I feel like an Uncharted, like live action. Oh,
that movie again, I think was a pretty big letdown for
yeah.
anyone who was a fan of the game.
Well, what about Tomb Raider?
Tomb Raider wasn't bad. The the story of it is just like,
Mm,
I vaguely remember the story.
yeah,
I thought the action was good for the most part.
Yeah.
You know, those 90 action movies,
Yeah.
2000, that I guess that was a 2000 action movie.
Jeez.
They kind of have their own flair, but
Yeah.
it's not bad. Tomb Raider will probably be in the list at least. Yeah.
Yeah, but
And I actually played Tomb Raider.
see,
Yeah.
see, so like I don't know. So I'm glad to hear that you say that you enjoyed it.
Yes, very much.
Um,
It's so much better than other, like, I don't even feel like it deserves to be in the category with most
mm,
video game adaptations, because it feels just more like a great show.
mm.
Yeah.
So how do you feel about the world? Or let's start base level. How do you feel
Mhm.
about Joel?
Joel's great. I like the complexity of that character is really
Okay.
compelling. I think I told you, like, as a father, it's easier for me to relate to him as a main character. We talked a lot about how it starts the story from Joel's perspective. So
Mhm.
you make this automatic protagonist connotation. You think like, oh, this is the main character. You thought maybe, if you were watching from scratch, you might have thought his daughter was the main character the way the first episode started.
Yeah.
But then you very quickly realize that's not possible, for reasons I won't get into. If you're listening to this is spoilers. Okay, we're gonna
Yeah.
talk spoilers.
Yeah.
But so like as the show continues and you meet his relationship with Ellie, I was saying there's a certain point. I think it's like episode 6 or something. We see Ellie's backstory episode,
Mhm.
and then that really shifts my perspective on like, oh, Joel isn't necessarily the main character. We're just getting a delineated way of, let's Tarantino this,
Yeah.
you got like chapter 1 was Joel's story and you follow with Joel, but then you realize it's really the two of their story.
Mhm.
And when you get her backstory, you could almost reshuffle the episodes
Mhm.
and put her episode as Joel and then get Joel's episode later. I feel like they both would have worked
Yeah.
in that same way. They just chose to tell it, I'm assuming, similar to the way they told the story
Yeah.
in the game. Or
So
do you even get Ellie's backstory like that in the game?
no, so
Okay.
you don't get Ellie's backstory. It's a downloadable content. So like
Right. Okay.
right
That's
after
what it
the
was.
right after the game came out, they released like because everyone was like 10 out of 10. The multiplayer was amazing.
Right. Yeah.
So like, where do we go from here? Here's more story, and so for $14.99.
Mhm.
So we're like, yeah, give it to us. So then
Yeah.
you get the DLC, and then you learn her backstory, and that's the first time you find out that she's a part of the LGBTQ. She's gay,
Mm.
and so like we didn't know that. You don't know that throughout the first game, and
Right.
so
And
it
then her
seems
connection to the Fireflies and what is the government agency?
Fedra.
Fedra. They obviously they hinted that she was a part of Fedra, but you didn't know like the full relationship there.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
kind of go into that a bit in the DLC.
Yeah.
But like to be honest with you, when I got the game, I was just trying to like here's a story
Hmm.
rather than when I was playing the actual first game. I was like, all right, I'm Joel. I'm gonna do these different things.
Yeah.
So I'm, and this will speak, I guess, to my play style, but I'm more of like punch things, move things around,
Hmm.
do different things. And so
Right.
Joel is that type of person.
Right.
So when you have that mid-game switch where you switch over to Ellie
Mm.
and Joel is out of commission for some time,
Hmm.
I was not about it at first because in the game or in the show they showed her she had like a gun.
Right.
I would be okay if she had a gun. She
Yeah.
didn't have a gun. She had a bow and arrow.
Right. Okay.
So with the bow and arrow, it has trajectory. So like that whole scene with her hunting the deer is directly taken from the game,
Mm.
except take a bow and
She has a
arrow,
shotgun.
and now she has like a
Right.
pistol or
Yeah.
a sniper or whatever.
Oh yeah.
So
She had a rifle. Yeah.
yeah, so it's like, so I wasn't a fan of it. Um, but then you get to learn and you get to see the weird uh
Yeah.
cannibalistic
Yeah.
people that are eating people. We there isn't really a religious aspect to them. They're
Hmm.
just it in the game at least.
Yeah.
So they kind of expanded upon that within the show.
Bro, that character turned.
Turned and he turned
You thought like,
quickly.
oh, this might be a good guy, and yeah.
No, not at all. He's the worst of the worst,
Yeah.
and yeah, it was interesting because I wanted to know what your thoughts were. Like, were you
Hmm.
rooting? Were you like, oh, maybe he is a good guy?
I mean, the show did a good job of letting you like they gave it space, you know. And
Yeah,
this kind of gets to your question. I started answering this of like the world building. Is this show it sets itself up? You think, and because I only played the first episode, I thought, oh, this whole thing is just a zombie apocalypse story, and the whole show. You thought it would be very Walking Dead,
yeah,
which I haven't watched all of Walking Dead, so I can't really speak to how it speaks on like the human condition, I guess is what I'm
yeah,
getting at, is like the show largely is just about how people are dealing with this. Are they becoming the worst versions of themselves, or are
mm,
they finding compassion
mm,
and finding a way to, like, everyone's dealt with loss in this world.
yep,
And that's one of the things I love so much about Joel is like I really related to his, like, the loss of a child thing was heartbreaking. The way
mm,
they started the story, and then it's like thinking about what I would be in that situation, just like a shell, like a broken person. I totally relate with that. And it's like, where does this guy go from here? How does he
mm,
react? How does he? And so and then it does the time jump, and you realize he did probably become the worst version of himself for a bit,
mm-hmm,
and he's kind of finding his humanity again.
mm-hmm,
So in a way, Joel had kind of been where this cult sort of people were
yeah,
in respects to
except not eating people.
he decided not to eat
Go down the
people
eating people route and taking child uh
in the game.
brides.
Were they eating people because they had to, like, because the show made it seem like they're out in the frozen tundra and they
Yeah.
have like no other choices.
Yes and no, but like you find
Uh
out that they're eating people, and it's just like,
yeah.
because like you stumble upon it because it seems like after coming across so many factions,
Mhm.
um, and seeing different people, like people are living and trying to find a life, and so you're like, oh, like these are like those last people, and they're nothing like the other
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
So like you stumble across like this like butcher, uh, like I don't know house, and it just has bodies like
Yeah.
flayed bodies, just kind
Right.
of. It's like Ramsey.
I was just thinking that
So
it
it's like
reminded me of
it's just
Ramsey
like what
from Game
is
of Thrones. For those
yeah.
of you who don't know.
So it's just like what is happening in here?
Yeah.
But yeah, like I think I told you this when before you play the game, before when I was like prepping you for like the show coming out, was like yes, the best way to describe it is that it's a zombie apocalypse, but it's much more than that. Like
Yeah.
it's like this, you get to learn about the different types of people,
Yeah.
and so yeah.
Yeah. So part of me is like, it's ironic because it reminds me of The Mandalorian in that way that The Mandalorian is like a classic Western. It's here are a bunch of stories. They may relate to an overall plot.
Mm,
They may just be totally isolated.
mm,
There were episodes in this show that were kind of superfluous to the overall plot.
yeah.
I think you could find like maybe little bits that would kind of relate to the overall story, but like the Nick Offerman episode, I feel like that one you could probably pull out, and even the one with the cannibal um, group,
Mm,
I feel like you could technically take that one out because you would need to bridge the gap between how Ellie found the medicine to save him and them getting to where they needed to go in the final episode.
yeah, but then that specific episode, it's hard to put all of that into one episode because
Hmm.
that span in the game is like maybe 10 to 15 hours of gameplay.
Yeah.
So like
Right.
you're going through and learning different things about this faction and
Mm.
about these people,
Yeah.
and like by the time that Joel ends up getting, and so the way that they did it in the show and the game is different. Joel ends up like falling off, like they're in a building, and he gets impaled through his like chest.
Uh huh.
And
Yeah.
so while he's being lifted off, the screen goes like red and stuff, and
Right.
that's where the switch kind of happens. In the
Mm.
in the show, he gets stabbed, and
Okay.
so either way, something's in his gut.
Right. Right.
Uh, but with that, right? Their relationship has started to grow
Hmm.
into something that you're like, I feel some sort of connection with Ellie.
Okay.
And so that whole situation of her taking care of him and then you switching and playing as her, and him ending up going and like by the time you realize what's happening,
Hmm.
you switch and start playing as Joel again.
Okay.
And so you're like, okay, like
Hmm.
I have a connection with Ellie, and that's
Yeah.
what The Last of Us does. That's what Naughty Dog as a whole like does perfectly.
Yeah.
Is makes you connect with characters even when you don't want to, necessarily. That's a nod. We'll come back to that later on,
I
like
see.
in a year or
So
two from now
you're
when
saying
part two comes out.
even those episodes that um like in terms of the overall plot, that was the phrase I was
The
going
Nick
for.
Offerman one, yes, could be plucked out. It wasn't even in the game,
Yeah.
but that episode solidified the relationship between Ellie and Joel,
Hmm.
and the turn of her and her mental state of
Hmm.
how she views things moving forward.
Gotcha. Yeah, and I'm even think like, and I'm not saying this as a negative. I think a lot of those. I don't think there was an episode that didn't serve the overall plot
No, no,
that
yeah,
wasn't
yeah.
good. I think there, even Ellie's backstory episode.
Hmm.
Technically, I wasn't expecting that.
Yeah, you could take
I
that
feel
out.
like you could take it out, but you would either have to keep Joel's backstory episode or hers. You couldn't remove both of those,
Yeah,
because you need something to relate that person's current reactions to what you know about the other character.
yeah, and so
So yeah.
so like because that was DLC, I think if they took it out and they made it a part of like I don't know where it would be
Mm,
within the Like it would be in that specific slot time frame, of course, but like they could have expanded or taken that episode out and expanded upon the time with these cannibalistic people
Mm,
or that time with Ellie
yeah.
to make it seem, because like you said, and this I felt the same way,
Hmm.
the turn of Joel being like, all right, I'm able to like move forward and do different things seems pretty quick.
Yeah.
I know that there was time between the two, like
Hmm.
because it starts like there's not really snow on the ground when you get stabbed, and then there's snow on the ground, so there's time passed.
Right.
But there didn't seem a lot of time passed from her giving him the medicine to like him being okay.
Mm.
Whereas a game kind of fleshed it out because you were there for so long.
That I think was one of the few problems I had with the show
Yeah,
because it was like she I couldn't tell how much time passed. They made it seem like
it was like a
she
day
got
or
the antibiotics,
yeah,
gave it to him, and she's like, "Come kill these guys," and he was like, "Okay," and then
yeah,
he just got up and by the time
yeah,
he found her in the building, he almost seemed like he was perfectly fine again.
yeah.
Um, Whereas I'm sure, like you were saying in the game, that gameplay took place over a longer period
Yeah,
of
it's like,
time.
where is Joel?
Yeah.
Because, like, again, at this point in the game, it's the midpoint in the game. The and you can attest to this because you've played a
Hmm.
part of it. Like, bullets are very special,
Scarce. I
and
remember
they're
you telling
scarce.
he was like, you will run out of those bullets, so don't shoot them off.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and like if you shoot at clickers, then other clickers come, and it just creates
Right.
problems for you.
Hmm.
So like it's a lot of puzzling. It's about to do some puzzling. But like you gotta think strategically in
Mm.
regards to how you attack those different issues. Do you want to spend the time and attack these people, or do you not? Do you want to just like skirt around them and then
Yeah.
move forward? So
That actually reminds me, there was this old, I think it's sort of like PS3. It was a Wolverine specific game. Did
mm,
you ever play that game?
maybe.
Because he would like go into berserker mode if you really wanted to fight,
Mm,
but he could also like you could switch into his like animalistic mode where he can smell things, so you could like kind of follow people's footprints. So
hmm.
you could see if a guard was around the corner because you could see footprints. So you could
Oh,
like avoid confrontation
yeah,
completely, or
got
you
it.
could choose to attack if you wanted to.
Yeah,
Kind of reminds me of that. And Joel kind of has that hearing mode. It
yeah.
reminded me a lot of
Which
that.
is weird because in the show he can't hear at all. So
Yeah,
uh,
he's like losing his
he's
hearing.
losing his
Yeah,
hearing. I did
that's funny.
think that the additions to the show from the game worked really well. The Nick Offerman like episode was like fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't see any flaws within that episode, and they like nailed it to perfection. It was different from the game because that
I
character.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. You know more than me, so
No,
I
you're
was gonna
good.
say that character didn't die in the game, right?
No, not both of them at least.
Okay.
Um, Nick Offerman's character basically he saves you during this like uh time that I think you're fighting some sort of clickers or whatnot. Um, or I may be wrong. It's been a while. But he has a relationship, and you learn more about that relationship by finding his ex lover who has hung himself and has
Oh,
left a note.
so that was in the game.
Yeah,
Their relationship.
they had
Okay.
a relationship, and he left a note, and you give the note to Nick Offerman's character.
That episode felt the most like melodramatic to me,
Mm,
just because you see like the whole span of their lives
yeah.
essentially. And then I was having a hard time like figuring out when he actually met Joel in relationship to where we know Joel to have been,
Hmm.
because there's a huge time jump from the beginning of where you see Joel's
Hmm.
origin story and where he meets Ellie and all the things that correspond. So
Hmm.
figuring out the timeline is a little uh, messy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, but like Tess and Joel were a thing, and so I guess it's between them building a relationship or having a relationship. So, uh, but yeah, did you see Test Die? Did you see that coming or no? Is that like
Not,
oblivious?
yeah, I don't know. There's certain things like I would say I didn't see it coming.
Okay.
Mainly because normally when you can almost tell who's going to die by who is cast in a role.
Mm-hmm.
And she was one of the few actors or actresses that I knew was in the show that was in what seemed to be one of the main roles.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't assume that she would die. I think she died in the same episode we met her or the episode after.
Episode after.
Yeah, so she was only in 2 episodes.
Mm-hmm.
So no, I didn't see that coming, and it was mainly because like I said, she was an actress I knew, and I was like, she's probably gonna be in the show for a while,
Yeah.
and she wasn't.
Nope.
But the way she went out was great.
Yeah.
This show has stakes, which I always appreciate.
Yep.
I hate it when you just lack all sense of consequence in a
Yeah.
show. It's like, why am I even watching this?
Yeah.
Because like it really seems like anyone can die at any point.
Mm-hmm.
That was the tripod dying. So
Oh.
we're probably on a tilt now.
No, that's fine.
Yeah, it's fine. You can just listen from
There,
it. Just turn off the video.
there you go.
But this is something I think overall in the show it really benefits from the idea that there are stakes and consequence for the character. And speaking of consequence, I think Joel's decision to do what he did to save Ellie and to keep her in the dark and lie about it, even when she is skeptical
Mm-hmm.
about it, but she wants to trust him.
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting to see how she reacts to that. I know she's not going to like being lied to.
Mm.
So,
Yeah. Well, all right. So what would you rate this out of 10?
I think you asked me this earlier. I don't know that my score has changed. I feel like it's almost perfect.
Okay.
But it's not quite there, and it could be contingent on how things resolve for me.
Okay.
So I feel like season 1 is very high. I feel like I would give it a 9.
Okay.
Yeah, there's just some
there.
things about it that I think just weren't quite
buttoned
perfect.
up.
Yeah.
Got it. Yeah. Do you agree with Joe's decision?
I agree with his decision to keep her alive. I'm not sure I'm sold on the way he decided to do it, but I don't know what other choice he really had.
Murdering an entire hospital.
Yeah.
And
humanity's possibly only hope of survival.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it's tough because they don't really have a lot of options.
No.
Yeah. It's either kill her and figure out the cure, or don't kill her and keep your sense of humanity. And that, again, that sort of ties to, I think, the best thing about this show and the most surprising thing about this show is that it's not just a zombie apocalypse. It's like a real reflection on the human condition. It's like, do you become the best version of yourself or the worst version of yourself? And it really blurs the line between like what is good and bad, because it would definitively be good to find a cure for humanity and to save people from this horrible death and total loss of self.
Mm-hmm.
But it would also be good to save an innocent girl's life.
Yeah. And so, like, in regards to like good and bad, it's like if you're good to someone, you're bad to someone else.
Yeah.
So someone's going to hate you somewhere.
Not all people can be heroes to all other people. Yeah.
So how do you would you have done the same thing? You said
no, not the. I wouldn't have killed the whole hospital of.
I mean,
people trying to find a cure.
They would have killed you.
Yeah, not the nurses. I think the doctor might have.
He only killed the surgeon. He didn't kill the nurse. He only killed.
I think he did kill the nurse. Did he do it in the game?
In the game, you get to choose.
Oh,
yeah.
So you get to choose who lives and dies.
Pretty much, you can. Well, the surgeon definitely has to go,
Hmm.
but you can kill everyone in there.
Yeah, the surgeon was like dying on that hill. Like he
Yeah,
was like he knew that his life was at stake and he didn't care.
yeah,
He was like, I'm gonna kill her.
yeah.
Yeah.
So like, but you go in there and you pretty much choose who lives and who dies.
Wow. Yeah, because the show made it seem like he was just like, which makes sense. It was like Joel. It was like pick your poison. Like
Hmm.
if you're gonna save her, you got to kill all the fireflies because they want to kill her.
Yeah.
So you have to want her survival
Mm.
absolutely, or
Or
you have to be okay with them killing her for the greater good of humanity. Yeah,
yeah,
it's tough.
yeah. But after spending 40 hours with him, like I agree with Joel. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, there's no way I'm gonna
Well,
let
you
Ellie
spend a
die.
lot of
And
time.
there's
Yeah,
no way I'm letting Ellie die.
yeah, yeah,
There's no way. And so everyone's got to go.
yeah.
But like this is what I was telling you about. Like,
And I think that's cool too in the way that they didn't necessarily make Ellie like I feel like if it was his daughter,
yeah,
one thing, it's his daughter. He's not going to let anyone kill her anyways, and
yep.
that's how he ends up thinking about Ellie. But they also they like his daughter just seemed like this perfect, innocent,
Mm,
intelligent, smart, right kid.
she's the
And then
complete
Ellie,
opposite.
they made the work to show you like she's not like an absolutely perfect person. No one in this post-apocalyptic world is. She's a
Correct.
flawed character.
Hmm.
But does that make it okay to still sacrifice her? No.
And if they did sacrifice her, would they even find the cure in the first place? The Fireflies are very like.
Right, and that's the other thing is like just because you're killing her doesn't mean you're going to find the cure
So then you just kill this girl just to kill
for
her,
no reason.
and
Yeah,
then what happens?
right.
Then Joel has to kill
Man,
everyone
it's so
again. So
nuanced.
so I
Yeah.
just I don't know. It's a lot. But that's the point where I was like I gotta know your thoughts because
Yeah.
that's literally what we wrestled with for because video game world takes like years for them to make another one.
Yeah.
It was we were already recording when they made the second one, and I had talked
Mm.
about it, and I was
Yeah.
like, yeah, this game can't wait.
Hmm.
But I had played The Last of Us in like high
Oh,
school.
you had been I think before you even knew there was a possibility of the show, you were hyping the game up.
Bro,
Yeah.
it's so good. And then yeah,
And then
so
every time they had a casting announcement, you're like, I don't know about that.
I don't know. But yeah,
Very
man,
opinionated.
that the way that they start the game and the way that they end the game
Hmm.
are fantastic. And then the journey in between
Yeah.
is just like icing on the cake.
Yeah.
The soundtrack is
I
amazing.
also really I don't want to get too far away. Like there are like really great things about all the episodes. The Kansas City episode
Okay.
and the deaf kid, that honestly that might be my favorite episode. And I think you said that wasn't even in the game, the aspect of him being
Him being
deaf,
deaf
but that I think added so much to his reliance and his
on
relationship
his
with his
brother.
brother.
Yeah.
And then the way that ends
Yep.
is like so hard. That was probably and I think maybe the reason I liked that episode the most, it was the most emotional moment for me in the whole show. Maybe
Really?
even more than Joel.
Joe?
It's really close because there was just something about that relationship, and that kid was like he seemed like the epitome of innocence.
Yep.
Like you did not want anything to happen to him, and it
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
so heartbreaking.
Yeah. That
That
character.
whole Kansas City thing, and then the relationship to the people in Kansas City is
Hmm.
like his brother was like
Yeah. It's
a
it's
douche
sad.
that like really betrayed some people. So
Yeah. So in the game, his brother is still that douche,
yeah,
but like the younger brother isn't as innocent. So I think that they were
yeah,
like, let's really tug on the heartstrings in the
hmm,
show. But it's still as impactful because you again, it's a time where you're spending like 10 to 15 hours with these
right,
characters and you're learning about their nuances and they're
mm,
talking while you're walking and you're doing different things and finding ladders and throwing cocktails at people and
Molotov,
Molotov
yeah,
cocktails and bricks. But
hmm,
yeah, it's
Well, and even the visuals of that episode, the way was it that episode or the one after, where it kind of concludes in that hellscape of the dead crawling out of the
Oh yeah,
ground and
yeah,
he's
yeah.
sniping people, and
Yep, yep,
it's
yep,
like
yep.
it's like the coming to Jesus moment for a lot of people in that
Yeah,
episode. Like
yeah.
the chick who was self righteously just taking power of Kansas City and
Hmm.
destroying Fedra,
Yeah,
who rightfully so should have been destroyed for what they were doing to the people there.
yeah.
And they were on a power trip, but then she almost
She takes,
took the power trip
yeah,
for herself
and
and felt
times,
self righteous about it.
yeah.
And you kind of feel for I can't remember his name, the older brother. You kind of feel for him,
Mm,
but then he like tells you what he did, and you're like, well, she's kind of right to be after him the way that she is.
yeah,
But you see the parallel between Joel and Ellie, and that brother's decision to do anything to say it was very similar.
yeah,
His reasoning behind doing bad things was very similar to Joel's reasoning in the end.
yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
And
There's,
that whole like the horror element of that episode, the way that it ended was
yeah,
that was probably the most horrific
yeah,
episode maybe.
yeah.
I don't know.
And then you like, it's those small things that are sprinkled throughout the game and the show that like flesh out Joel and Ellie
Yeah.
even further, because you can see contrast of what they could have been,
Hmm.
or if they
Yeah.
go down
Yep.
different paths. So
Yeah.
it's, it like it's literally like Harry Potter, where I can dive into the world and like find different things that they were trying to, or maybe they weren't trying to showcase these things,
Hmm.
but like I'm making it up in my head. But yeah, The Last of Us Part 1, overall, the video game is a 10 out of 10 in its perfection.
Hmm.
The show, I will agree with you, there were some aspects that like they
it's
could have
it's that
fleshed.
it's that classic book reader watching the live action adaptation. Like
Yeah,
I'm trying to think of any movie adaptation of a book that someone loved, that they
they
loved
love the
the movie
movie
more
more
than
than
the
the
book.
book. Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't. I love the show. The show is amazing. The
Yeah.
show is a 9 out of 10.
Okay.
Or nine, even a 9.5 out of 10. It would, um, but nothing can really touch the game because, again, it's hard for a show to do the same or provide the same experiences
Hmm.
that you have as a game, because if it's all action, it's going to be boring.
Hmm.
If they spend 4 seasons on the first game,
Right.
also going to be very
Yeah.
boring.
Hmm.
So
That's a problem a lot of like action movies have in general. Is like if you don't have reason for the action,
mhm,
if you don't give me a reason for the why this fist is up against this fist,
yeah,
it doesn't matter.
yeah,
And unless it's just purely visual spectacle like Mortal Kombat,
yeah,
like that knows what it is, it knows it's a ridiculous.
yeah. You're not there for the story.
Yeah, no. Yeah, but
But yeah,
I think it when it can give you both,
hmm,
it's great.
yeah. And this show gave both.
Yeah,
It
it
gave
did.
both story, it gave heart, and it kept the soundtrack, which is again phenomenal.
You
And
said it was the same score from the game to the show. Yeah.
yeah, and there's Easter eggs for gamers that actually played the game in it. That doesn't take away from people that may not have played the game.
Yeah.
Like you're still able to grasp like the story as a whole,
Hmm.
and the things that they changed made didn't really make an impact in regards to their journey per
Yeah.
se, but it did flesh it out a bit more, which I enjoyed.
Yeah.
And I kind of wish I was able to play through those things within the game. Like I was like, oh, that would have been cool to play within the game, and
Hmm.
that's the lens that I was watching the show with,
Yeah.
and being like, this show is great. This show is literal perfection in regards to like taking a perfect story and adapting it
Hmm.
to screens for not just game game fans, but newcomers as well. So I
Yeah.
think that they did a great job in regards to blending both of those lines. So
Yeah.
and I'm glad that you are in a camp that you believe that it is a good show. I want you to finish the game, but then I I want you to play the second one, but
Yeah.
then I don't want you to play the second one because again, it's literally like the first one where like the first 30 minutes of the game impact the rest of the stuff, but it is craziness.
Well, I've told you, I've heard people say like the story for part 2 is the best story they've ever heard. Well, I heard one person say that, but it was one person that I really respected. So I was
Yeah.
like, that's
It
them's big words.
That is big words.
Yeah.
I don't know if it is the best story. Um we will have to talk about it. This depending on
This is
on what
where the conversation stops because
yeah.
we can't get into it without you giving spoilers, and I can only speculate, and you can
Yeah.
just sit here and be like, okay,
All right. That's an
yeah.
interesting theory. But yeah, I we'll have to dive deeper into it because like I think I don't know how you're gonna feel about it, to be honest with you.
Okay.
I from knowing you, normally I could say like, yeah, you'll like
Yeah.
this, or nah, you're not gonna like
Mhm.
this. But like it's a hit or miss at this point. So
Yeah.
I I hope that you enjoy it,
Yeah.
but they may change something that makes it more enjoyable for everyone.
Mm.
Um, yeah, because again, the game isn't a bad game. It's just how you improve upon perfection,
Mm.
and it's hard, especially when you've grown bonds with different people.
Mm.
And so,
I
like,
see.
you're expecting it's kind of like gamers, like you said, like when they were announcing casting, I was like, I was like, I don't know if that's really Joel or that's really Ellie, but like, that's how The Last of Us Part Two initially goes, and so
Okay.
there's a lot of Easter eggs or foreshadowing that have happened already within the show
Mhm.
for Part Two that
Gotcha.
you probably haven't noticed. That will probably be
It'll
like,
start clicking
yeah, it will
when
click.
season 2
Yeah,
gets going. Yeah.
because I was watching, I was like, hey,
Hey,
whoop, whoop, whoop. So, but yeah, so if you've played the game and you've played both games, you'll know different things that they've already alluded to
Mm.
that happen in part two. Um, but yeah, it's again, it's one of those games that is just like,
Well, I'm looking forward to
how
it.
do you
Like
improve?
for sure. And I think that's the sign of a great thing is like you don't want a cliffhanger for the sake of a cliffhanger.
Yeah.
I think there was a lot of it felt like resolution to the story of this season,
Mm-hmm.
but definitely setting up something to look forward to. So.
But we didn't even know that we were getting a part two, so that's the other thing.
Yeah.
So.
Yep.
But
Siskel and Ebert. What were those film critics? Showing my age. Siskel and Ebert give it 2 thumbs up. Way up.
Way up to the ceiling.
Out of frame.
Out of frame. Up to the ceiling.
All right, that brings us to the end of this episode. Guys, thank you so much for listening. We hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please follow this podcast wherever you're listening to it. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all major podcast platforms. And if you like this episode, keep an eye out for our companion videos where we address specific topics related to the same thing. Here at Nerd Institute, we really love hearing from you guys. If you have any questions, if you're following along with any of the series that we're reviewing, please send in your questions. Tell us what you guys are thinking. We just might use your question as a topic for one of our podcast episodes. Engage in our matchup tournaments where we pin characters from all of our favorite franchises up against each other to see who you think might win in a fight. And of course, like and follow all of our content across social media. That's Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, and Twitter at nerd_institute. And if you don't feel like using social media, you can always message us directly with any comments, questions, topics, or concerns at anerd33@gmail.com. And until next time, Later, nerds.